Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Cellar Dwellers podcast, episode something. I don't know.
Like 18 or 19, I think.
You'll see
I
it
forget.
before. Today, Andrew and I will be discussing the MCU's most recent installment, which was Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Ah, you can't see him. Oh, there he is. You just saw him. He's right there. That's
I
him. That's Paul Rudd.
tried to, as you'll see, like position my head and my face with what I thought was the most intriguing, best part of this film. That was
Yeah. It's very interesting how you did that.
Lot to go over here. I think
Yeah.
per usual, you and I probably had similar takeaways from this movie.
Yeah, we did not see it together and we have not talked about it
That's
since seeing
the
it.
thing. So you get all the juicy gossip and takeaways and our opinions here, first and foremost. So I guess as we kind of just talked about before, the positives I think were a lot less than the negatives here. So I think it's best to go over those first, get those out of the way. Because there was some good takeaways that I had from this movie. Paul Rudd's one of those actors that I'm just really biased for and
Yeah,
will
you're a big fan.
always just love seeing him in anything. And I think if anything, he has carried this franchise and I think is the one thing of many I will say even still to this day that the MCU does right is their casting decisions, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Think they absolutely nailed Scott Lang with Paul Rudd. Just a guy that just doesn't take himself too serious. Other people don't take himself too serious, himself that serious, and it's kind of the perfect fit from given Paul Rudd's slate of movies, mainly being like a comedic actor, in this type of role that is one of those films I think similar to like Guardians where they can get away with a lot of comedy. Does it get old and a bit repetitive?
Yes.
Yes, but like you can't take Paul Rudd like too serious, and that's why I think he's
Yeah,
just
that's true.
role and how he's kind of transitioned over the years. And really, when you think of it, like make fun of it if you want, but like Ant-Man and his character and the whole, you know, since since his introduction, with the pilot film Ant-Man, he was an integral part of the Avengers and against Thanos and all that good stuff. So
He saved the universe.
he did. But anyway, back to Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. So going into this movie, you had said something to me that kind of caught my attention, piqued my interest, and something that I was replaying in my head watching this whole movie. And you had said something along the lines of you're introducing Kang to the MCU and you're going to put him in an Ant-Man film.
Yeah.
So I was just from like the second I sat down here, I tried to be like, okay, I gotta try to make this make sense and see
For,
where they go with it.
for a bit of clarification on that comment that I made, because I do remember making that comment. My problem with it wasn't that he was being introduced in an Ant-Man film. It's that they were pitting him against Ant-Man.
Right.
You have Kang the Conqueror versus Ant-Man.
Definitely, definitely not ideal. But again, since we're gonna get the positives out of the way, in a weird way, I think it kind of worked. Given that okay, of course he was first introduced in Loki, that's part of and not part of, but part of the MCU. Having him in the quantum realm and how he kind of got there, in my opinion, kind of made sense and was viable for me at least.
The whole exile thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because when Loki, doesn't listen to him. He's like, if you get rid of me, like I'll come back, tenfold and it'll be really fucking bad. And he kind of hints at that again too. Like, you get rid of me, there's more of me out here. And of course you see with the end credits is a bunch of Kang. So
Yeah.
his character, I think, was really well done. And I think it's something that I'm excited to see how they progress with this because I think they have the potential to build around another really great, intriguing villain.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they have to be introduced at one point or another. And we're kind of at the point with the MCU now where you gotta, people like you and me that have been along, the ride for a while, you from the beginning, but you got to have the realization that, the original, Avengers and stuff, Captain America, Iron Man, we're not going to see that again. We're not that we're never going to get back to that like level of excitement, level of originality.
That's
So
true.
you gotta have, your expectations set at a realistic point. So that being said, I absolutely loved, him in this movie, and I think how they kind of counterbalanced him against, Ant-Man the Wasp, and then of course with Cassie Lang, his daughter. I think it kind of worked. Would I've liked to see him in a more prominent film, like in the next Avengers film, maybe have an introduction? Sure, maybe take a lesser role, and we'll get to the great Moco later, I'm sure. But ideally, I kind of would have liked to see them have this movie built around him, and then have Kang like in one of the end credit scenes or something, like to further come. I think kind of how like Thanos was introduced. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But again, I think he really carried this movie, and a lot of the good takeaways I had was from Kang, and definitely left me with a high sense of being very intrigued to see what they do with the character. I thought the movie was a little bit better than I was anticipating, especially kind of how it kicked off and how they get into the quantum realm. I mean, again, with like a lot of their trailers, they basically show you the whole plot synopsis of the movie, what it's going to
That's
be
true.
like. So getting there was very kind of very dumb, but once you were there, you're like, okay, and it was enjoyable. And I think again, I kind of had my Paul Rudd rose-colored glasses on throughout the
Hmm.
movie, of course, like in Kang,
Yep.
and loving his character and his villain, and how he interacted with everyone else. So I think on that, from that standpoint, this movie had a lot going for it. But as I like to say, a lot of the other characters and a lot of the other things they tried to connect the dots, but sort of introduce a new character, kind of, was all over the map and fell flat on its face. So yeah, overall, it was enjoyable. I liked it. A movie that I definitely probably won't go back and watch again, but
No,
was
no.
not honestly was not as bad as I thought it was going to be, especially with again, the start of the film and him coming there when God, I'm forgetting Michelle Pfeiffer's character's name. It came together more or less, and like I said, main takeaway is what they're going to do with Kang, and definitely hope they do it right and don't mess it up. But given
Yeah.
given MCU's recent track record, I don't have much faith. But listen, you gotta be positive about something. So
Let me just double check real quick here. Letterboxd, diary, close the ad. Here we go. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. So I gave this a solid 2 out of 5 stars. So clearly I have more problems with this movie than I do positives. Just about the only major positive I can think of is Jonathan Majors as Kang, and not as the, I don't want to call it happy-go-lucky Kang that we saw in Loki, but he was more jovial, I guess. I don't know what word you would use to describe him in that show.
yeah, it was definitely kind of the tale of two Kangs, I think, with him and Loki, and then him in this one. Again, that's something kind of interesting to see what they do with it as well. Like considering there are thousands of different versions of him, to see kind of.
Infinite versions, really.
I think obviously being a MCU film, he obviously was gonna have a way bigger role here. I think they played it right. I don't really know much more to say besides Paul Rudd being Paul Rudd, and Kang. There wasn't much, positive things to take away from this one.
Jonathan Majors does a fantastic job as Kang the Conqueror rather than Kang He Who Remains. Every scene that Jonathan Majors was in was 100% encapsulating the way that he held himself as the Conqueror. Very, I guess, subdued at points, but also very willing to throw down when he needs to. I was a little upset that he got defeated by giant ants, but then again, that's the problem with putting him against Ant-Man in an Ant-Man movie. I understand that the end credits scene established the Council of Kangs. I get that, and that there's infinite versions of Kang, and all of them are infinitely more evil than he who remains at the end of Loki. The problem is that if you're trying to establish, let's just compare them right out, a Thanos level villain for the next few coming years of Marvel movies, don't you think it's a little undermining to the character if we've seen two versions of this Kang and both of them have been defeated in their first outing? So who's to say that, when next year, 2 years from now, 2025, Avengers 5, the Kang Dynasty comes out, who's to say that, like, you or I or any other Marvel fan with a brain and a memory sees a Kang in that movie and go like, well, why is he a threat? We can just defeat him. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that if he pops in and like instantly vaporizes, I don't know, Shuri or Spider-Man or Doctor Strange, you know what I mean? Just to give him some credibility back. So I think Marvel is like really, really, really treading on thin ice here with Kang. Like one more wrong move and his entire credibility is out the window and gone. On the very surface level, Jonathan Majors is 100% the right guy to play him. So I give him props for that. And I hate to say it, but that's probably about the only glaring positive point that I have in this movie.
For one thing, too, kind of transitioning to negatives, like something I was very surprised about was like the shit acting kind of across the board and just the piss poor script and just I mean, you gotta go into a Marvel movie and anticipate like bad jokes, but there was just a lot of those parts in movies, any movie, but especially MCU movie, where there's like, especially in comedies, they do this now, like they'll leave like a half second of silence, and that's intended for the audience to laugh. Oh!
The laugh track, yeah.
There was a lot of like awkward pauses in this
Yeah.
movie. Like people didn't know whether to like laugh or like be like, what the fuck is going on? And there was like a kid screaming half the movie when like something stupid came up, and just when they had to drink that goo so they could understand the beings and stuff.
You know what
Like,
that's called?
no,
Lazy writing.
no, I thought you were gonna say a joke from the movie that I
Nope.
already forgot, but
Lazy writing.
definitely because of that, yes. Which again seems to be an unfortunate trend in the MCU. It's almost like I said, before, they've kind of reached their pinnacle, right? With Avengers 3 and 4.
Yep.
And even with Spider-Man too, it like still kind of climbed up. And now it's like, well, we did that, we're never gonna top that. So like whatever, like screw it. We'll just throw all these part-time jokes and bring back fucking Darren Yellow Jacket and make a Modoc, which I know we're going to talk about, which I just looked at and I'm like, why? I go, Modoc was beyond stupid, both visually and narratively. Absolute waste of what could have been an interesting and intriguing villain to come in the MCU.
I have legitimate constructive points to
Oh yeah,
could have
for sure.
happened.
I'll let you take it, but before that, like I just want to say, from a franchise that already gets a lot of criticism for not having good villains, arguably up until Thanos, and now you have something good with Kang, but again, like you said, because there's an infinite number of him, and it's like they don't have a clear story, and he's already been defeated twice, so his credibility's lacking. But also now, because of this whole introduction of the multiverse and infinite number of Kangs, like he's never going away theoretically, right? Unless they
True.
fix what Loki caused, which was like the breakup of all the universes and timelines and stuff. You have you have a villain like Modoc that, again, kind of a stupid, like probably not a great villain to bring to the big screen, but still something you could like, if done correctly, done right, could be very
Totally.
intriguing and interesting to see. And you throw Darren, who like honestly was probably one of the dumbest villains in an MCU film, and make him into some half-ass type of. I was just like,
Yeah.
why? That was my first thought. I'm like, why? Why do we need this? And
My
then
my
at
first
the end,
thought was my first thought was to laugh, but go ahead.
I so unfortunately like I had it ruined for me on Instagram because whatever, people are just assholes and spoil shit. And so like I already saw it. I'm like, I asked you before, I'm like, is this dude really in it? And you just said just watch. And so I did, and I then you see him and I'm just like, ugh, I'm like,
Mhm.
why?
Yeah.
Why do you have to like tie that in? Can you just
Hmm.
leave it alone? And then like they make him like Kang's bitch and he's like the hunter, but then when Cassie becomes giant Cassie or whatever, like she's like, don't be a dick. And he's like, I'm not gonna be a dick. Like I'm sitting there and I'm like, did like a 6-year old write this character? He
Yeah.
must they must have, because oh my god, it was just infuriating to see and just to be like, they're just absolutely ruining and butchering what could be a really good villain. But again, like, and I'll let you speak. I'm rambling on here, but it is. It is all just piss poor writing. And like I said, I think the MCU, writers and screenwriters, producers, directors, whatever, what have you. I just think they don't know where to take the universe, and they're just kind of, like you said, just on very thin ice and just treading water right now at this point. And you really almost feel like it's going to take one more movie for this thing really to implode.
Yeah.
And I don't see how they can get it back on track at this point.
But I mean, to tell you the truth, like I don't think they're past the point of redemption. I think that if Marvel plays their cards right for the next year or two, maybe three, like they can sort of like sweep phase four under the rug a little bit. So MODOK, I remember back in the day when Captain America 2 Winter Soldier came out, and there was that scene where he and Black Widow go back to Camp Leahy and they find Zola in the computer. You remember that?
Awesome scene.
Yep. I remember myself and Kyle, who you've seen on this channel a couple of times now. We were thinking to ourselves, "Oh, that's so cool. They're just gonna make Zola like a MODOK kind of character where he has like the floating body and the TV screen instead of like an actual human face. And that would be like a really cool real world modernization of MODOK, because MODOK, look it up, like Jack Kirby MODOK. It's a silly design that only works in comic books because they're comic books. Okay, they didn't do that. That's fine. They want to introduce him in an Ant-Man movie. That's fine. They want to make him Darren Cross, I think is his name. That's fine. Like, I'd do it differently, but you know, you do you, Marvel. So then there's like a few months ago, there were leaked images of Ant-Man and the Wasp action figures. And on the back of the box was MODOK, how he comes in this movie. But he had like the metal face covering on in the toy. So I saw it and I was like, I don't know. It kind of looks pretty dumb, but it's a toy. It's a leaked image of a toy. I'll give it a chance. Then the movie comes and it's even worse than I could have imagined.
Always the toys that fucking spoil it, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, like just let's just take like the basic design of MODOK in this movie, right? The giant floating head sitting in a chair with short legs and short arms, right? Fine. That's how MODOK looks in the comic books. That's how he should look in the movies. I totally understand that. The thing with Marvel, the MCU, the movies, since 2008 when Iron Man came out, part of their foundation has been to take what seems wacky in the comic books and make it fit in a real world setting, right? So you look at at actual Marvel comic books and you read like Infinity Gauntlet, right? And you see Thanos, who's this big honking purple, like bright purple alien with bright blue and gold armor. How do you translate that to a movie? Okay. Well, first of all, you take a human sculpt, make it a little bit bigger, give him actual muscles, tone down the colors of everything by a lot so it doesn't look out of place. And there you go. Like, that's it. And then you and I watch the movie and you're like, oh, yeah, I can totally see that being an actual humanoid alien. So with MODOK, like, yes, they transferred the design almost perfectly. The thing is with MODOK is the face. It's very like short and distorted like that. This is where I would allow some creative difference and say like, okay, maybe he always has that metal mask on. Maybe he actually doesn't have a face and he's fully a robot, you know? Or you give him the Zola treatment and just give him like a digital face or like on a screen or something. But even besides the writing, besides the character, besides his conversations and the dialogue, the instant you see that guy fly in from the background, you're like, dude, what were they on when they designed this thing? Come on, people. Like, I was sitting in the row and I just started laughing. And it's like,
I laughed too awkwardly a lot.
this is supposed to be where a menacing secondary villain comes in to confront the heroes, and this is where that villain has to be established as a threat. And if I am laughing at the villain, it is not a threat. Like, it's so simple. Just like I know you wanted to keep it like wacky, and that this now bleeds into the writing of the character. Like in the first Ant-Man, Darren Cross was not like that. So what and like I know you can't explain it, Marvel can't explain it because they didn't think about it, but like what part of being in the quantum realm for Lord knows how long changes his personality to be an idiot that makes jokes? And then he's like, I don't want to be a bad guy. It's like, then why were I don't get it. And like there were these people behind us in the theater that by the time like the last half hour of the movie rolled around and MODOK kept showing up, this one kid, it was so funny. He goes, "Oh my God, this guy again," just out audibly so the whole theater could hear it. And it's like, it's just like, if that's how you're gonna handle not even a villain, but just a new character in general, just leave him in the comic books, man. Just that's it. It's so simple.
So this is my synopsis, what I think happened in the early stages, principal writing, principal photography, what have you. I guarantee you someone was like, got it. Like, okay, Kang isn't because God forbid we just have Kang who's like a menacing fucking threat. He's called Kang the Conqueror. Like, instead of maybe having multiple versions of him and write that sort of into the movie, I guess, if you want to balance it when you really only need one to take on Ant-Man, the Wasp, and Cassie Lang. Like, let's bring in Darren Cross, but let's make it so when his suit malfunctioned and he got sent to the quantum realm, like his face like didn't fully like shrink and his arms were, and then we can make him into Modo. Like, if you how about this? If you want Darren Cross in the movie so bad, wouldn't have been a million times better if he was in the movie, he was the actual hunter, he was still Yellow Jacket, and he was that more fucked up and that more evil and menacing? Wouldn't that have been a way better payoff? And then again, you save MODOK for another day when you actually can figure something out creatively, and narratively, and just fit him into the story at a later date that makes more sense and figure out a better design.
I agree.
I much would rather have saw that. Because I mean, that guy literally had a vendetta against obviously Scott Lang, but also Hank and Hope Pym.
Yeah.
Have him in the movie as like fucking darker Yellow Jacket or whatever, who's like another threat.
Yeah, or like upgraded technology from Kang.
Right, because that's what they did. Like they found him, then they're like, all right, we're gonna make him like fucking Humpty Dumpty that can fly, basically. That's I don't know if you've been to Storyland in New Hampshire. I go there annually. But I just kept thinking of Humpty Dumpty every time
Yeah.
I saw her.
Yeah.
But my God, like that was just my biggest takeaway. I'm like, you completely ruined what could have been a very good villain down the line.
Yeah. So I guess that if we talked about the villains, right? Kang good, Modoc bad. I guess that before we talk about like the just the overall movie itself and consequences and how that leads into the rest of the MCU, it would only make sense that we touch on the heroes a little bit. Let's start with Cassie Lang, who was recasted between Avengers Endgame and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania.
Which I didn't know. You told me again.
Yes.
Total dick move.
Yeah, to include now, like I'm just spitballing here. I don't know if this was like studio problems with the actress or whatever. I don't know. But in my opinion, I think it was sort of a way to hire a more marketable, more well-known actress to help the movie in box office numbers, which Marvel's a business, so I understand to an extent, I suppose.
Okay, but
Um,
do you think anybody, if that was, which I'm not doubting you, that totally could have been their strategy, but
yeah.
anyone like, I'm going to see, besides that actress's family, whatever, friends, did anyone say, I'm going to go see Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania because I like the actress playing Cassie Lang?
No, no, I think if people were to do that, they would have done it for Paul Rudd or um
Right, the draws of the,
um Michael Douglas. Oh my God, that was bad. Sorry.
yeah, like even the random fucking Bill Murray cameo.
Yeah, that was another thing. I was like, I forgot he was in the movie, Bill Murray. And when it got to that point where they're at the bar waiting for someone to show up, I was like, I was getting like, oh my God, like who is it? I wonder who this is gonna be. And then Bill Murray shows up and I just couldn't feel anything but disappointed. Like he just doesn't look like he fits in a Marvel movie. He just looks so out of place.
Yeah.
So the other heroes, I'm not really going to talk about Hank too much because he was nothing more than a background player. The Wasp, Hope, served little to no purpose in a movie that was partially named after her, which is poor writing.
That's my takeaway with her character. Like, if it was just if she was never introduced, right? Let's just say for whatever, like it was just Scott Lang that had the technology. The Pims weren't even involved. And again, I know that would be hard, but just bear
For the
with.
sake of argument,
Did you ever, in any of the movies she was in, Ant-Man and the Wasp, even the first Ant-Man, obviously, any of the Avengers, either of the Avengers films, what have you, like like you just said, she in all those movies served little to no purpose at all.
I think the second one was um, the most agency she had as an individual character. The other ones, like the first one, she was really a secondary character, whereas in Ant-Man and the Wasp proper, she was really a main character. And quite honestly, from what I remember, one of the highlights of that movie. I'm also a fan of Evangeline Lilly, but in this one, it was she like, and it's not her fault either. But there was just nothing for her to do except to save Ant-Man at the end, and we'll touch on that in a moment when we get into like the overall consequences of the movie. And I guess the last thing I'll say for now is obviously Paul Rudd, Ant-Man. I know you really like him a lot, and I don't really have a problem with him per se. However, there were multiple points in this movie, specifically in the scene where he's in the probability chamber. It solely felt like Paul Rudd was turning into Dwayne Johnson. Because you know how Dwayne Johnson plays himself in every movie?
Yeah.
That's what Paul Rudd feels like now. Like he feels like instead of playing Scott Lang, it feels like he's playing Paul Rudd wearing an Ant-Man costume.
Yeah, he's
That
almost
makes sense.
been kind of like reverse typecast.
Want a break from the ads? Subscribe to Cellar Dwellers Productions on YouTube. The ads won't go away, but you'll see more great content like this.
So I guess the most specific example, like I mentioned, the probability chamber that Ant-Man falls into is when the Baskin Robbins Paul Rudd shows up. And I don't know. It was moderately funny the first time, maybe the second time he shows up. But by third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, it's like, dude, we get it. You made a Baskin Robbins joke. again. Make one every Ant-Man movie. It's old. We get it. And it just like that whole scene, it never once felt to me like Scott Lang. It felt like Paul Rudd every single time. And again, I don't have a problem with Paul Rudd, but when you're trying to make very character-driven, script-heavy movies, it does not help when your script encourages the actor to be themselves instead of the character. They are literally paid to be other people. So at any point, unless you're making a documentary, I don't know why an actor should be paid to be themselves.
I mean, I think that bothered me a lot less than it did you, and I totally hear what you're saying. And but like the thing is too, I've just become accustomed to just take the what is beating of just repetitive, tired, boring, slapstick, stupid jokes that these MCU movies just force down your throat. And so like that scene to me at that point, I was just honestly like half paying attention.
That's fair.
Again, like it almost seemed like that whole plot point of the movie had nothing to do with continuing the story of getting, that what's it called? Kang's fucking power source pod shrunk back down. Like it had little to do with that continuing, the plot,
Yep.
but rather than like the tech geeks and designers and CGI artists and what have you for this movie just get fancy with all these fucking stupid versions of Ant-Man and Paul Rudd and Baskin Robbins Paul Rudd. Like it was just like a visually what they thought would be pleasing to the audience when it really distracted and took you out of the movie. And really the second that point started, I was like, I really hope this is a quick scene because you see it in the trailer.
And it wasn't.
The opposite, it literally drags out for like what seems like 10 minutes. It probably wasn't, but it seemed like a good 10 minutes of like, okay, we get it. Like just fucking throw the fucking thing in, shrink it down, get out of there. Like, I'm done. Totally unnecessary scene. I just think that Ant-Man was really just the driver of all the movies, he's been in. And I get what you're saying. Like it was cool to see different parts, with Ant-Man and the Wasp, the first one, which is the second installment in the Ant-Man franchise. But I just think like to me, like everyone outside of Scott Lang, Ant-Man is just like a side character and
That's fair.
helps pull the movie along and has some important parts to it. But yeah, and again, it's not her fault. Evangeline Lilly, like she's a very great actress and plays that part really well, but served, like you said, little to no purpose here in this movie. Again, it was unfortunate and very unnecessary that they had to recast Cassie Lang. However, I think she did a pretty good job playing the character. Now, playing the character, I think her name's Stature, if I'm right.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think that's her.
I didn't care enough to look into it.
The scene that drove me insane, like, was when she's trying to literally like rally the troops and like
Over Kang's loudspeaker.
over Kang's loudspeaker
Yeah.
and like she's literally projecting herself. And I honestly wanted to vomit. And again, it wasn't her fault. It just again speaks to this theme.
I think that's her fault.
But also just like, what the hell are you doing, Marvel writers? Do you think anyone that's in that movie, besides like a kid that's eight and younger, that's just there to see fucking Ant-Man like fight Kang and see giant ants and stuff, like, did anybody buy that? That whole scene just total cringeworthy for me. Like,
I just think that Catherine Newton, I think is the actress, was just really irritating.
yeah.
And that's about as best I can put it.
My point though being like because I'd sound hypocritical if I said otherwise. Like, I like what they're trying to do, like introducing her, because I think Cassie Lang's stature is a part of the new Avengers. So I like that aspect, but I do agree, like the actress, like you could have put anyone in that suit. And
Yeah.
Cassie Lang, the character, I agree. She was very kind of irritating and just kind of felt like a bit unnecessary in this film, and could have been introduced and could have been played by a zillion other actresses and done just as better, just as good as the job, if not better.
There's obviously one more hero that neither of us have discussed, and I think that works out pretty well because that actually leads into one of my biggest problems with the script. So Janet Van Dyne, played by Michelle Pfeiffer, is obviously the only one who spent an extended period of time in the quantum realm. At the beginning of the movie, Cassie Lang creates this like beacon that goes to the quantum realm, and Michelle Pfeiffer is immediately like, shut it off, shut it off. And everyone straight through. Why? Why? Why do we have to shut this off? Shut it off, shut it off. Why? Shut it off, shut it off. Okay. They get sucked into the quantum realm. Fine. Scott and Cassie go get sent over there for some ungodly reason. Janet, Hank, and Hope get sent over there. No idea why. Probably just to complicate the plot unnecessarily. They're walking through the quantum realm. Janet, Hope, and Hank. Hey, Janet, why do you look so nervous? What's down here that we should know about? Don't worry about it. I'll tell you later. Really? We're in the quantum realm now. Maybe you want to tell us now?
Nope, later.
Maybe you want to tell us why we're meeting with Bill Murray so that we can be better prepared to face the threat that's in the quantum realm that you're clearly not telling us about. Literally, this entire thing of her not telling anyone anything was solely 100% to complicate the plot to an unnecessary point. Literally, just like you escape the quantum realm in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and you don't want to tell anyone what happened down there. Fine, I get it. You're in the real world. You have no intention of going back. I get that. But when you're in the quantum realm and you don't have a way out, you need to tell everybody flat out, hey, by the way, there's an interdimensional traveler that has literally conquered time and space in this quantum realm with us, and he wants to kill me and by proxy you.
That's a great point. Like, what the hell was the payoff of her doing that?
Literally nothing. Like, that is information that is a need to know basis, and everybody in that movie needed to know. Like, so to do that was you can understand how incredibly frustrating that is for me to watch. And by comparison, my enjoyment of Michelle Pfeiffer's Janet Van Dyne literally just went down the toilet. Because every scene with her in it was just so infuriating to watch. When like you know that she has the information that they all need to survive, and she's just not giving it until they're literally at death's doorstep, getting attacked by Kang's guards, and they escape by the skin of their teeth. And she's finally like, "Oh yeah, by the way, I should probably fill you in on what's going on. Really, you should have done that 3 hours ago."
Way more negatives than positive takeaways in this movie, unfortunately. And again, the current theme with these recent Marvel films, whether it be Doctor Strange or Thor or different parts of Black Panther, I thought it just seems like there's no, what I've said before, that there's no direction that the MCU is going in. And as we've touched before too, I just think like they don't care about connecting the dots now. It's just once they're at the next movie, they try to lazily, poorly, in a very stupid, dumb manner, half-ass tie things together to kind of like not fully raise your suspicion. You're like, okay, I kind of get that, but then there's no payoff, i.e., Janet Van Dyne being silent for 80% of the movie when, like you said, there was absolutely no payoff. Like, None at
Right.
all.
Correct.
It was just like a child like being stubborn about something. That was my takeaway.
Yeah.
And really, really fucking irritable. And like honestly, Andrew, like if she met Kang and he just like cut her head off, I wouldn't have given a fuck, to be honest with you.
No, because neither this movie or the last one or the first Ant-Man for that matter has done anything to make you genuinely care about the character of Janet Van Dyne. So she's kind of disposable at this point.
And one other thing too, before we kind of wrap up and talk about, where the MCU is going, I guess I was kind of um holding out some hope that on a couple different parts, but so like the final kind of throwdown with Kang, like I was sitting there and I'm like, what would be like really cool to like give this guy some credibility and build off of what not is really not a great movie, but kind of end it like very well. And people might say, "Oh, it's a copycat of Avengers, Infinity War, whatever." But I was really hoping like Scott Lang, someone, all of them, everyone but Cassie or something. Like I was really hoping he was gonna win and kill them to give him that credibility that we're talking about. Like I don't know how, maybe not kill them, but like trap them there. But then it's like the other thing too that I forgot to mention that really fucking pissed me off was like, so at the end he's kind of down for the count, or so you think, Hang, and the portal opens back up and they all go through except Scott at first, and I'm like, oh, like okay, like I this is where they're going towards, like he's done, like this is the end of his story, like he'll sacrifice himself so they can move on, and Cassie's the next, gonna take the mantle of his character, whatever. But no, it opens back up and Hope comes back again and helps him. And then they're like, okay, let's go home. Why?
That was my exact next point, actually.
Why? Like, why? What the fuck? Just go, just do it all at once. Like, why are you like not torturing us, but like just playing with us, fucking with us? Like, there again, what's the payoff? There's none.
I think payoff might be the wrong word here. And if I can just explain myself for a second. One of the best lines in the movie, or interactions rather, and they even put it in the trailer. When everyone goes through the portal except Scott, Scott and Kang are thrown down for one last time. And Kang says something along the lines of, "You can't win." And Scott says, "I don't need to win. I just need both of us to lose." That is incredible. That is top tier right there. Because Ant-Man, who's always been the underdog background player, is finally having to step up, and he clearly understands the fact that he's outclassed by Kang, but if he can just hold Kang off long enough, then he's got it. It's like, okay, so either Ant-Man is gonna die or he's gonna be stuck in the quantum realm and then he's gonna die. That's the only option, right? It's Kang the Conqueror. So then Hope comes through the portal and she, I think, like blasts Kang into the probability chamber. So he's stuck in there. So like, yeah, he's not dead, but he's defeated, definitely, for now, at least. And then the portal closes. And then Hope and Scott are stuck in the quantum realm. And this is very similar to a thought I had during Loki, when I thought Marvel was actually committing to an idea. Silly me. I was like, oh, this is great. Like, there's actually going to be consequences. Scott and Hope are stuck in the quantum realm. That's fantastic. And then, I don't know, maybe that could lead into like, the Cassie and the Van Dynes and the Pyms trying to like get back into the quantum realm. And then that's going to lead the Council of Kangs to Earth or whatever. But literally faster than I can even have these thoughts, the portal reopens behind them.
And they literally are like, let's go home. Like, that was a dialogue.
Yeah. So my biggest problem with this movie, and this is a doozy, is that the movie starts at point A, right? And then point B, you'd think should be over here, right? It's right here. the movie literally goes in a circle. And at that point, why are we even watching it? Like, what's the point? Because you've added no development for your main characters, any of the heroes. You have not added credibility. You've actually taken away credibility from the villain. And the story, as we'll talk about now, segue, see how I did that, is seemingly serving no purpose whatsoever to the future of the MCU, with the exception of an end credits scene. So I paid $10 for a movie ticket to watch a 2-hour and change movie where the only important thing that happened was the 45-second end credits scene. This movie had zero consequences, and therefore I do not think will hold any legitimate meaning in the future of the MCU, although the MCU will have you believe that everything that happens is because of what happens in Quantumania, which you and I can see is not true. So anyway, where do you think the MCU is going, Christian?
In a circle.
Bingo!
Literally what I told you. I don't think it shouldn't be called the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It should just be called Marvel solo films. Because, like I said, there's no connectivity. They're all, at this point, they're all in film. They're all in their own universe. You can make that argument because now there's an infinite amount of multiverse, universe, storylines. Fucking, there's no congruency anymore. None.
And I told you that was going to be a problem, right?
Yep.
From day one.
Yep.
I said it. I said multiverse problem.
Saying no, like they have a good track record, they'll figure it out. I don't know if all those people retired and took the money that they made from Avengers 3 and 4 and living somewhere in Thailand right now.
They may have.
I don't know where the hell the Russo brothers are, but God, they need to come back and try to save this. But like I said, at this point, I'm not gonna go see every Marvel movie. I'll really at this point where I used to see everyone because they all built off each other and you couldn't wait to see what came next because it was building towards something. But these films are not building towards anything. Because
yeah, I mean,
aesthetically, like this, you have Kang now, who's a very good villain, but you have an infinite number of him. So unless you literally reverse what he did and erase the multiverses and the different timelines that whatever his name was, the guy in Loki.
Yeah, He Who Remains.
He Who Remains did by dying and warning Loki, like what would happen unless you reverse all that, you're just gonna continue to have this problem where, like you said, the movie starts at point A and thinks you're going to point B, going in a straight line somewhere, character development, introducing new characters, building off old ones, good storylines, referencing other movies, other characters, progressing them into the next movie. You're not going to have any of that. It's its own, they're now their own entities that are just going to go in circles. I mean, how can you, the next MCU movie that again I'm excited to see, I think is long overdue, which is Guardians 3, but
yep.
How the hell are you gonna tie this into that movie?
I don't know.
Because even our bet, like you and I could sit down and make a very good educated guess. That's not gonna how they'll try to tie it in.
No, I think Guardians 3 is going to be much more concerned with concluding the Guardians story rather than connecting it to the rest. And for the Guardians of the Galaxy, I think that's one of the few, if not the only exception that I'll take, because like, let's be honest, Guardians 1 and 2, they didn't miss. They were awesome.
Yep.
And James Gunn, for all of my questions I have for him about the DC universe, he's proven his strengths with Guardians of the Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So for him to be making a third one finally, I think that I really have high hopes for that movie. And I haven't had high hopes for a Marvel movie for a long time.
Nope.
Or at least I try not to. But Guardians 3, I get hyped up every time I see the trailer in the movie theaters. Like I'm I'm so ready for that movie. I'm so ready to be like just elated to see another awesome James Gunn movie, but I'm ready to like have my heart broken because somebody's gonna die. Like, you know it. Somebody's gonna bite the dust, and it's gonna be so hard because the Guardians of the Galaxy, more so than any other team in the Marvel movies, uh, grouping, character relationships, whatever, they are the ones that have that feel the most like a family. And you know, the movie's already going to be difficult enough narratively, trying to see how they're all going to cope with Gamora not being the real Gamora, let alone like finally coming to terms with that and then having someone die, you know?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess the only other one I'm really like super excited for is Blade, if only for the fact that Mahershala Ali is playing Blade. That's I mean, that's the only thing we know about it. But everything else, like, I should be excited for the Kang Dynasty. I should be excited for Secret Wars, but I'm
Are you
just not.
excited for the Marvels?
The Marvels, no, because I I still haven't even watched Miss Marvel.
I think you're excited for another one too that's coming out after that.
Which one?
Deadpool 3.
Oh yeah, but I'm not even like those aren't even on my radar yet. The X-Men and Fantastic Four ones.
Yeah. Look, this is kind of a good segue. Like, I think that this is where we should expect the MCU to go, which is now all these movies are now their own sub universe.
Should we put in the clickbait title right here? This is where the MCU dies, but have dies in all capital letters.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I just think that's where we are now. They're all their own sub universes. They're all their own entities, and they don't give a fuck about building, up to anything where they all make sense or building towards anything good. And I think if you accept that, then it is what it is. And we'll continue to gripe and critique all this, but I don't think it's going to be getting better anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess like the last final thought that I have, my dad and I are in the process of him watching for the first time, me rewatching the Infinity Saga. We're going into Captain America, the first one, so we're still really early on. But I think partially, and I think this would also solve your problem with it too, is that they feel disconnected, all these movies. I think part of what really helped, especially the early MCU films, feel connected when they reached, say, the Avengers or Avengers 2, was that you had team ups in these movies that weren't like full on Avengers movies. So I mean, think Black Widow was in Iron Man 2. Iron Man shows up in the end credit scene of the Hulk. Black Widow shows up again in Captain America 2. Hawkeye is in Thor. Obviously, Phil Coulson and Nick Fury are, and Maria Hill. All three of them are mainstays. They're like the umbrella that sort of encapsulates all the movies. So even if you're establishing a character like Thor, let's say, right? You're like, okay, Thor 1 comes out 2011. It's pretty by the books, just like disconnected because they're just introducing this character who literally lives on another plane of existence than Iron Man and the Hulk and all them. But Phil Coulson is still there. So like you have that connection to the other movies already. Whereas this one, it's like if you didn't know, if you watch Quantumania, if you didn't know where it took place in the timeline, there's almost nothing in there to tell you where. Does that make sense? Do you know what I mean? And then the last little joke point I have in my notes here is actually the first thing. Take a shot every time someone says quantum realm. You'll be wasted in 20 minutes. I don't know if you noticed that.
The first 10 minutes.
Well, this is the reenactment, right? Guys, look, I made a portal to the quantum realm. The quantum realm? I was in the quantum realm for 20 years. Right, but this will help us help people in the quantum realm. Now here's Ant-Man. Quantum realm? You know what I mean? That's the entire movie, by the way.
Oh, sadly true. but I still love Paul Rudd.
That's fine. You can love Paul Rudd.
You're only as good as a script you're reading off of, right?
90% of the cases, I'd say yes. And this did not have a good one.
But yeah, so I guess we can say the temperature is at best lukewarm for
Lukewarm. Yeah, you're right. Lukewarm,
next slate of Marvel movies.
if not freezing. But yeah, catch us with Guardians 3. Next year, is it?
No,
I think May of 24 or something.
no, it's this year. Guardians 3 coming out May 5th, 2023.
Damn. Catch us on May 6th when we'll be recording our Cellar Dwellers podcast on Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
We'll finally get to see my man Andrew too. You know I've been dying to see.
Oh, Adam Warlock?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Will Poulter, man. I'm excited for that movie. I think it'll be, mark my words, I think it'll be good. I think it'll be good. But until then, who are we going to tell?
Let's see. Obviously, Aiden.
Yes.
He's our main marketer here.
Yep.
Let your mailman know, grandmother.
Interdimensional Space Lord.
Yep. I'll tell Carmine down the street and his wife.
How much are you going to charge you for a sandwich today, Carmine? $26.50.
$28
Tomorrow, $16.
Do you have a menu?
No.
Well, hopefully that was enjoyable for you guys. Stay tuned for a lot of great content that Andrew puts up, and hopefully another couple Cellar Dwellers pods coming out soon.
We have been the Cellar Dwellers, and you have been a lovely audience.
Till next time.